Hello everyone, this is Senrex here from the Order 66 Hellions, and today I'm going to be doing a territory war guide for 100 million to 200 million GP guilds. This is going to be on setting defenses and offenses for guilds in this GP range. First overall, we're going to be going through who this is for. Second, we're going to do an overview of the territory war map as well as talk about some basic terminology. Third, I'm going to go over some basics of setting defense. Fourth, we're going to talk about Galactic Legends, because in this GP bracket, a lot of guilds should be starting to get at least one of each Galactic Legend. Fifth, we're going to talk about what to do with Territory War Omicrons, as they're going to be extremely valuable at this level. Sixth, I'm going to talk about offensive powerhouse teams and Galactic Legend encounters that are good in lower level brackets. Seventh, we're going to be talking about fleets, what's going on there and how should we approach that subject area. Eighth, I'm going to be showing you guys a sample defense and explaining why it works in this GP range. And lastly, we're going to end off with some self-promotion. So first, we're going to talk about who this is for. If you want your Territory War record to look like the Territory War record on the right, I definitely suggest you apply a defensive strategy like this. But more importantly, it's going to be for guild leaders looking to improve their defensive strategies as well as their offensive tactics, individuals looking to help out their guild in Territory War, anyone who needs help distinguishing between good offensive and defensive teams, as well as anyone looking for a good territory war guild. These are the things that you should look for in their defensive and offensive strategies. Let's go over the territory war map and a little bit of terminology. So each one of the zones right here on the map is labeled, and these will refer to defensive and offensive zones. If you took a mirror image of this and applied it to offense, same terms apply. Now we have T1 through T4, B1 through B4, and F1 through F2. Each one of these zones represents something. So T1 stands for top zone 1, T2 top zone 2, etc. B1 stands for bottom zone 1, B2 bottom zone 2, etc. Fleets stands for fleet 1 and fleet 2. This is just the basic overall layout of the map as well as the terminology I'm going to be using in this video to address each zone. Feel free to pause the video here and take a screenshot of this image if this would be helpful for your guild, as using proper layouts like this can really help in the ease of setting and defensive processes as well as laying out orders before Territory War begins. Let's talk about the basics of setting your defense. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to analyze your opponent. So before you put any defensive squads down or even order any defenses in game at this galactic power range, you're going to want to analyze your opponent's defense. This typically requires having an officer. As soon as the matchmaking has been completed, look at the Territory War match and find the name of the opponent's guild. Now, there's 4 different sites that I recommend for organizing and analyzing your opponent's data. Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg. You can go ahead and find your opponent on that website and see if, just do a little basic rundown comparison of your guild. So if your guild's 200 mil GP and your opponent's is 213, you can look at your Galactic Legends and compare them to their Galactic Legends. But this site is only going to tell you part of the truth in terms of how your opponents are going to be on defense. Second, I'd use Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg recruiting. This is a little bit more advanced than Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg, as Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg gives you a historical breakdown of your opponent's Territory War history. So say you have a guild and you get 50 out of 50 members to join, right? And your guild stands at 150 million galactic power. That means that in Territory War, you're going to have 150 million active galactic power. And then you're paired up against an opponent, and you look at their guild, and you notice that they have 270 million galactic power. And you're probably thinking, well, this is ridiculous. How could we be paired up against such an unfair match? You can use Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg recruiting to analyze your opponent's Territory War history and determine roughly how many players they have joined Territory War. Typically, there will be patterns with guilds like this. So maybe the guild that you're paired up against typically only has 130 million galactic power worth of their players join Territory War. This is a common thing that happens in lower GP brackets. Guilds get matched up against guilds. They look at their opponent as GG, and then they're just demoralized from that point forward because their opponent's stats look a lot better. But what they're not looking at is the full picture and the fact that their opponent does not have all of their members in their guild joining Territory War consistently. So in reality, the matchup is a lot more fair than it appears. Next, we're going to talk about Hotbot and WookieBot. These are two bots that are available if you just Google them up for free to download onto your Discord. Hotbot runs several commands that will give you an analytical display of your opponent's Galactic Legends or key characters versus yours. And lastly, WookieBot's my favorite. WookieBot gives you a super in-depth analysis. Image shown right here is from WookieBot on your mods, datacrons, relics, characters, and overall any important stat that you would need to know for Territory War. WookieBot outlines that for you. It just takes a few minutes to run. Let's talk about the basics of setting defense here now that we've analyzed our opponents. So we're going to be looking for a few things. You want to set ideal defensive squads. Now, there's a few things you can do on your opponents, particularly at low levels in Territory War that I want to talk about. First, we're going to talk about brick walling. Brick walling is essentially when you look at your opponent's Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg page and determine that they don't have specific counters that they would need to defeat you in your guild. So hypothetically speaking, if your guild has one player that has a Jabba the Hutt high relic with its ultimate ability, and your opponent's guild has no Supreme Leader Kylo Rens and no Lord Vaders, you can pretty much just set that Jabba the Hutt on defense and be fairly confident that it's going to get several defensive holds. So brick walling is a tactic that you can use. So after you're done analyzing, look to see what zones and what characters would ideally give you the best defensive value. Again, a great example, if you have a Lord Vader and your opponent's guild has no Lord Vaders, no Jabbas, and no Jedi Master Kenobis, you're going to want to put those Lord Vaders on defense 100% of the time. Let's go over some ideal defensive teams. For lower levels, Padme lineups are going to prove extremely tricky on defense for most players, as well as Sith Empire lineups and Separatists. Separatists refer to Count Dooku, Asajj Ventress, Jango Fett Separatist lineups, as well as Separatist droids with General Grievous, as well as Separatist Geonosians with the Pog with Lesser Omicron. Those are amazing defensive teams. The Separatists all around serve a lovely defensive function in lower level Territory War gameplay. Let's talk about what we do with Galactic Legends. Now, I have a little chart here, or a little bit of organization here, that shows you what you should do with your Galactic Legends. There are two kinds of Galactic Legends, offensive and defensive Galactic Legends, and there is important difference to note between them. First, your defensive Galactic Legends are Jabba the Hutt, Rey, Lord Vader, and your offensive Galactic Legends are Sith Eternal Emperor, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, and Jedi Master Luke. Now, what does this mean? So a defensive Galactic Legend is simply defined as any Galactic Legend that in most scenarios offers more defensive viability than it does offensive viability. So a Jabba the Hutt is going to cause your opponent a lot more problems on defense than it is going to grant you offensive capabilities, because Jabba the Hutt is such a hard team to counter. Same goes for Rey and Lord Vader. So these three Galactic Legends should always be placed on defense. If your guild has 6 Reys, you should put 6 Reys on defense. If your guild has 6 Lord Vaders, put them all on defense. If your guild has 6 Jabba the Hutts, put them all on defense. Meanwhile, offensive Galactic Legends like Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, Jedi Master Luke, and Sith Eternal Emperor serve very weak defensive roles. Sith Eternal Emperor and Supreme Leader Kylo Ren are countered by a number of teams that don't even consist of Galactic Legends. You can use your Imperial Troopers, you can use your Jedi Knight Luke. Any of these teams are going to just steamroll Sith Eternal Emperor and Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. However, on offense, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren can counter Jabba the Hutt, and on offense, Sith Eternal Emperor can counter just about any team except for Jabba the Hutt and maybe Lord Vader. So you're definitely not going to want to put these guys on defense, as they serve a weak defensive structure, but can really defeat super difficult teams on offense. Same goes for Jedi Master Luke. Jedi Master Luke is easily countered by Darth Revan, or the worst sin of all is putting your Jedi Master Luke on defense and having someone 2-man it with Sith Eternal Emperor and Wat Tambor. So since Jedi Master Luke is so easily countered by Sith Eternal Emperor, and Sith Eternal Emperor should only be used as an offensive Galactic Legend, there is no reason to put Jedi Master Luke on defense, as at that point you're basically just inviting your opponent to take out your Jedi Master Luke with their Sith Eternal Emperor. Lastly, Jedi Master Kenobi's in a flexible position. He's really good on offense and he's really good on defense. So typically what I would recommend is if you split them up 50-50. If you've got 7 Kenobis, you put 4 on defense and save 3 for offense. Or if you've got 10, you do 5 and 5. So Jedi Master Kenobi has a very split role, but typically you're going to want to split them up about 50-50. Do the best of your ability, as he is great on offense and defense and can really get you some crazy holds. Let's talk about Territory War Omicrons. I've got a list of really the most viable Omicrons in this lower GP bracket. Let's talk about Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious is not great on defense, so you're definitely going to save him for offense. Mara Jade in the Imperial lineup is definitely going to be an offensive Omicron. Hera Syndulla is an offensive Omicron. If you're putting your Phoenix squads on defense, typically those are not great and they're going to get countered very easily. Mace Windu in a Jedi Knight Revan lineup is going to be a great offensive Datacron, as well as Grand Inquisitor if you have a few Grand Inquisitors in your team. Now, defensive Omicrons are really where you want to put your best Omicrons, because in Territory War, a lot of the defensive Omicrons take a team from being just all right, like Poggle the Lesser, to being astounding, like Poggle the Lesser plus his Omicron. So on defense, Embo, Poggle the Lesser, Droideka, Mara Jade with Starkiller, Juhani with Starkiller, and Mace Windu with a Padme lineup, as well as Captain Phasma in her First Order lineup, are amazing defensive Omicrons. Embo is going to drastically increase the survivability of your Jabba the Hutt team, which is going to be annoying as crap on defense. Poggle the Lesser is kind of new, and a lot of lower level players have absolutely no freaking clue how to counter a Poggle the Lesser Omicron because it's very good. So you're going to want to throw these as close to the front wall as possible, as well as on defense, because it's just offering you a lot more value. Droideka Omicron with Separatist droids, again, just like Poggle the Lesser Omicron, is almost guaranteed to get you a good hold if your team's geared up high enough, as a lot of people in the lower GP brackets simply have no idea how to deal with this Omicron. Mara Jade with Starkiller is very effective on defense. If you put your MJ with your Starkiller, this essentially prevents your opponent from using General Anakin Skywalker to counter your character, which is very nice because the main counter to Starkiller at this current time is General Anakin Skywalker. So Mara Jade's Omicron on defense with Starkiller prevents your opponent from successfully pulling off that counter. Juhani with Starkiller. Juhani is essentially the Embo Omicron, but for Starkiller. She's not a great character outside of Territory War, but when she's paired with her Omicron and Starkiller, that team is pesky and just does not die. Mace Windu in Padme lineups is very good, as he will increase the chance that your team focus fires a specific enemy character, which is very nice because his Shatter Point mechanic will force your guys to target specific characters, and that'll allow them to stack up their courage more quickly, as well as defeat targeted characters faster, as typically on defense, Padme can be all over the place. So having Mace Windu kind of hold her accountable and force your squad to attack specific characters on defense really increases the defensive viability. And Captain Phasma, she is just so quick in Territory War. You're definitely going to want to put her on defense, as it's going to throw your opponents off if she has that Omicron. Let's talk about offensive powerhouse teams. So there's a couple offensive teams that I want to go through, and these teams in 99% of all cases should be saved for offense. First, Commander Luke Skywalker punches up drastically. Do not put him on defense. Shock T plus the clones, offensive team only. Terrible on defense, amazing on offense. You need a human mind to play it. Imperial Troopers should always be put on offense. This is important to note that this is a General Veers Imperial Troopers team, not an Iden Versio Imperial Troopers team. Iden Versio Imperial Troopers teams should always be placed on defense, as opposed to General Veers teams, which should always be used on offense. Night Sisters are an amazing offensive team, as the computer typically is not smart enough to go around Night Sister Zombie, so you can punch up really, really high with your Night Sisters. General Anakin Skywalker or Gas Clones is an amazing offensive team. He counters Starkiller extremely well as Inquisitors extremely well as Darth Malgus extremely well. So if you have a few gases saved for offense, you should definitely consider this. Admiral Raddus is great on offense, as well as Jedi Knight Revan. These teams all share the same feature, the fact that a human mind plays them better than AI ever will. Some good Galactic Legend counters to know. Grand Inquisitor plus his Omicron counters both Jedi Master Luke. Jedi Master Luke can be fully autoed with this team, and Jedi Master Kenobi. The Jedi Master Kenobi's counter is a little bit more sketchy, and if you don't quite pull it off, you can certainly two-shot it. Next, Sith Eternal Emperor plus Wat Tambor counters Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt will be the only character left alive, but an Imperial Troopers lineup coming in to clean up will fully clear them. So if your opponent has Jabba the Hutts and your guild has no Jabba the Hutt counters, you can use Sith Eternal Emperor plus Imperial Troopers to clear that team very easily. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren counters Jabba the Hutt. It does not work if the opponent has the Embo Omicron. And General Grievous plus the Droideka Omicron counters Sith Eternal Emperor. This is a great value team. If your opponent, for some reason, has placed their Sith Eternal Emperor on defense, you can get a very, very, very juicy counter with General Grievous and Droideka. That is, if you didn't put your Droideka Omicron on defense like I typically recommend. So let's talk about fleets. Fleets really depends. So a lot of lower level guilds don't have a super high amount of high-level fleets. So I'm going to go over offensive and defensive strategies. On defense, I typically would recommend for low-level players to place their Negotiator as well as their Empire lineups and half of the big three fleets, meaning Executive, Profundity, and Leviathan. So just kind of like your opponents. Offense, again, you're going to want to save your Finalizers, your Separatists, and half of the big three fleets. If you're analyzing your opponents and you realize that they have a significantly lower amount of big three fleets than your guild does, you can use the lockout method on your opponent. So typically what this means is on the first wall of your fleets, you're going to set a super, super tough fleet defense with a lot of big three fleets. And then the back wall, you're just not going to put much at all because there's no chance that your opponent is ever going to get through the big three fleets that you have in the front. Now, this is a little bit niche and a little bit advanced for this guild level as at lower GPs, Territory War is a lot more unpredictable than higher GPs. But if you're sort of in the higher 170 to 200 million GP range, you can definitely use this method effectively if you're outmatch your opponents on fleets. I'm going to go through a little bit of sample defense here. We're going to go through each zone. So on top one, I'd put half of your guild's Jedi Master Kenobis and Padme teams. Now, there's really a good thought process behind this because when you're at a lower level of GP, in Territory War, you're going to want to put your best squads on the front wall. This is because typically opponents' guilds are less active and less coordinated at lower galactic power thresholds than higher ones. So if you start out with your toughest lineup, your opponent's guild very well could be not coordinated enough in order to clear that zone. On top two, I'd put Geonosians, not Omicron, because in most cases, if you have this Padme wall, your opponents are not going to be able to clear it because they're not going to be coordinated enough. In top three, I'd recommend your Bounty Hunters and your Jabba. Typically, I like to put Jabbas a little bit further back in the defense in the front wall, as it's really, really tricky if your opponents have already expended a bunch of energy on the front two zones and then they get stuck behind a Jabba or two in this middle zone. It's really going to grind them to a screeching halt. T4, you can reserve it for lower level players to get banners. So this is just a zone where anyone can put a couple squads in so that they can get the rewards. F1, I do half of your big three fleet as well as full negotiators. And then fleet 2, I'd recommend weak fleets, mostly Empire fleets. In B1, your Sith Empire teams, meaning your Darth Revan, Darth Malgus teams, you put as many of those as you can in there, as well as any Reys and Lord Vaders that your guild may have. This is, again, a super tough front wall that's going to prevent your opponents from clearing it super quickly. Now, this wall is going to be a little bit easier to clear than the top wall, so that's why in B2, we're putting Poggle the Lesser Omicrons and Separatist Droid Omicrons. For this reason, right, if they go bottom, which in most cases the opponent's guild will, as they'll recognize the bottom as a much weaker zone to clear, once they clear the bottom zone, they're going to be fented into attacking tougher squads than if they cleared the top zone. So essentially, by giving them a really, really, really bad front wall, you're showing that they have to make one of two choices, and if they choose the easier path, which most guilds will, they're going to be stuck countering tougher teams on the bottom zone. So in B3, I'd recommend more Separatist droids as well as Iden Imperial Troopers. And then B4, even in my high-level guild, we recommend Dealer's Choice. So you can put anything in B4 that is over 80,000 galactic power. And this just allows people to get some defensive teams that maybe they missed out on deploying in certain zones on defense, as well as some, maybe teams, or just maybe ease the suffering that defense is. So, if you've got a lot of mandatory zones, in order to fill up a little bit quicker, it helps to have a zone that just anything can be put in, so that you're not spreading yourself too thin on defense. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. As always, I'm doing roster reviews, so feel free to leave your GG in the comments down below. A little guild plug as always. If you're tired of not getting Reva shards, join my guild, the Order 66 Hellions. Discord link in the description below. We get the most Reva shards of any guild under 400 million GP. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.